everybody, welcome to the podcast. I hope you've had a really nice week. I'm back. I'm doing another solo episode this week. A couple things I'm just going to say before I jump into the episode. First of all, I'm out of isolation. It feels great. I came out on Saturday. If you don't know, basically a couple weeks ago, I saw a friend. We were distanced. We were wearing masks and everything, but it turns out that she had COVID, so I had to isolate for 2 weeks. I didn't have it. I never got any symptoms. I was completely fine. Well, not that you can't get it if you have no symptoms, but either way, I've waited the 14 days. So now I'm out of isolation. That's not to say that I'm going crazy. I'm not going out and seeing. I haven't seen anyone outside of my house other than when I went to work. I've very much been scared to go back into isolation, so I'm being overly cautious now, like probably to a detriment cautious. But yeah, I'm out. Yay! It's nice to not be stuck in my bedroom, even though I've not really been going out a lot. I can go and make my own food in the kitchen, which is really nice. Yeah, it was a very stressful time. Many other things were happening as well as being in isolation, and I just wanted a hug, but I couldn't have a hug because I was isolating from everyone else in my house. So let that be a warning to any of you who aren't taking COVID. Not that I think that anyone who's listening to this podcast isn't taking COVID seriously, because I know a lot of the people who listen, and I just don't think that this podcast attracts the kind of crowd of people who aren't taking COVID seriously. But if you're happening to listen and you don't think it's going to affect you that much or whatever, like, the isolation side of it really, really sucked. So if anything, be safe for that, because being on your own for 2 weeks, not being able to do anything, was awful. And also, the fact that I was on my own for 2 weeks in my room and I just barely did anything meant that when I came out and I started moving again and walking a bit more, went to had to walk to work, walk around more than just from my bed to my desk, my legs really hurt for the next couple of days because my muscles just lost everything they had in them. So that's another side effect of isolation that I haven't heard spoken about. So yeah, if you're not worried about COVID itself, which you should be, but if you're not, and you just think that it's just like a cold, it'll be fine, it's just a flu and then I'll get over it. First of all, it's not. It can last for months and months and months. Keeps coming back with chest infections, and you have lung scarring that could be a lifelong issue. But beside that, the isolation isn't fun. So just be safe. Wear a mask, keep your distance, wash your hands, all of that. Is that the only other maintenance thing I had before I went into it? I think so. So today I thought I would kind of take the opportunity of what's going on in the UK and kind of the political climate and everything at the moment to talk about Save the Art. Well, not Save the Arts, but that's kind of the movement. I want to talk about the arts in general, but because of Save the Arts, I'll explain in a minute. So I thought I would just talk about the arts. I'm going to focus on musical theatre just because I am such a theatre kid. Don't act, just consume it. I have terrible stage fright. Even if we thought I might have some talent, which I don't, I have terrible stage fright. But I've always loved musical theatre. As long as I can remember, High School Musical was just my favourite thing when I was a kid. I've always liked singing and music-y things. So having that with a story has been just something I've loved for forever, which is why I'm going to focus on that. And I just think as well, I have more to say, but that's not to say that the other parts of the arts, dancing more specifically, just plain and simple acting. Acting isn't simple, but, stage acting in movies or on an actual set as opposed to live theatre. Did I say dancing? If I didn't, dancing. Photography, makeup, it's all an art and it's all just as valid in this. I'm just going to focus more on musical theatre because I'd also been kind of planning an episode anyway, but I just thought it was quite timely at the moment. So, if you are not from the UK, or if you are from the UK and you just haven't seen, that's fine. So obviously we went into a national lockdown in March because of COVID. And our government introduced a really great scheme. It was a furlough scheme, and it meant that anyone who couldn't work at the moment, if they couldn't work from home and obviously couldn't go into work because we were in a national lockdown, the government would pay 80% of their wages, which obviously it's not 100, but you are saving some expenses. You're not driving to and from work if you had to drive, like, it was quite good considering. It definitely helped a lot of people. One thing they didn't do, I'm pretty sure they also introduced grants to businesses in general and stuff. One area that they didn't support was the arts. Theatre, I know a lot of theatres they rely on charity donations more than anything else, so they couldn't apply for the business schemes and the help there. So a lot of them are having to close down. They're really struggling because they're still not open. A couple of them have tried to convert into cinemas because cinemas have opened up again, so they're just like showing musical films, kind of social distance and things like that, just to try and get any kind of income so that they can stay open and not have to close indefinitely. Or definitely, who knows. Eventually the government did grant them, I think it was 1.5 million or something, which is something. I couldn't honestly comment on how much that is in terms of like how much they gave to other people. I don't know, but they did eventually give something. And Save the Arts was a huge part of this. It's a hashtag that a lot of people were using. Like I said, I'm a massive consumer of musical theatre, so I follow a lot of people on Instagram who are in some of my favourite shows and everything. So I saw them all posting about it. They would post videos that they had of them performing in these shows, or like just photos of them in costume backstage, like pro shot pictures, anything. Save the arts and everything, because it is something that needs to be saved, and if it didn't get the help, then it would have to close. And it's, other than the fact that it's these people's jobs and livelihoods, and they would have then, like their whole career taken away from them, it's also, as a consumer, just a whole thing that would then be lost. It's taken a long time for theatre to become accessible to not even a majority of people, to be honest, at the moment. Like, it still isn't. It's still, I've only been to see 1, 2, maybe 5, 6 shows in my lifetime, most of them through school, which obviously comes with a massive discount. So, it's still not massively accessible to everybody, but it's probably more accessible than it's ever been, especially with the rise of the internet and everything like that. But it's gotten to the point where it's started to become partially accessible, at least, and then if it has to close and becomes a more elite thing, obviously prices are going to rocket back up, and it's going to become an elite thing to enjoy again, which would be a huge shame. It would mean that I wouldn't get to go anymore, which again, like I said, I haven't ever really gone that many times. I was supposed to go twice this year to see the same show, but they were both one was in April and one was in July, so obviously I couldn't go to either of those. But yeah, so then last week, I think, one of our MPs, one of our politicians, said that people in the arts should retrain to work in jobs like cyber or plumbing, because that's a more viable job. He said that the arts aren't viable. He said that they're low skilled, and that basically, people who work in this industry should retrain for a more viable career, something that will sustain them, whatever. So there's been a massive uproar, because obviously it's a horrible thing to say and it's awful, and you shouldn't have, the government should just support these people and not just tell them to retrain for completely STEM jobs, basically. Not that there's anything wrong with STEM, but also if everyone retrained for STEM jobs, then that would be an oversaturated market, and then there'd be an unemployment crisis, and it doesn't make a lot of sense. But either way, a lot of people have been angry about it in the last week, more so than ever, really. Which is why I thought I would talk about it on the podcast today, because, like I said, it is something that's always been really important to me. And I think there's been a lot that I've taken from musical theatre, and that a lot of people have taken from musical theatre. And it can be, and is in many cases, a form of activism. And I think that's important too. And I think I'd probably be talking about this on the podcast regardless of feminism or anything, but you can tie it into was feminism and self-acceptance and, you know, a million other things. So I thought I would talk about it, and I would try and talk about it in that kind of context. Again, like, I'm sure many people who are listening to this don't think that the arts are, I mean, I don't know how you could think the arts are low skilled, like, that's just insane to me, but sure. But yeah, maybe I'll introduce you to a new musical you haven't heard of before. Maybe we can just, you know, message me and be like, yeah, I really like this musical too, and we could talk about musicals because it's my favourite thing to talk about and I could talk about it forever. Introduce me to new musicals because I always want to be introduced to new musicals. I was really surprised because I do call myself quite a theatre fan, and I was going through my playlist on Spotify, which is like 30 something hours long. It's got like 700 songs, my musical playlist, but I was like, there are not many musicals in here. So please introduce me to some more because I would definitely like them. I'm sure there are musicals that I like and that I've listened to before that I just haven't, you know, I've forgotten and they're not on my playlist, but talk to me about it. I love musicals. I could talk about them forever. So, I'll actually start talking about them. I'm just going to drink some tea. Give me 1 second. I put it in a flask so I don't have to down it this time. Oh, I burnt my tongue. Woo. Okay, so I have written down a little list to help me remember because I have an awful on-the-spot memory. Where should I start? Okay, I'll just start at the top of my list. So at the top of my list I have Legally Blonde, which, if you're not familiar with the musical, I'm sure you'll be familiar with the film. It's the story of Elle Woods. She is dating this guy called Warner Huntington III, and he breaks up with her to go off to Harvard and be a lawyer because he says he needs someone who's more serious and who's smart, basically, because he doesn't think that she's smart because she's pretty and she's blonde. So she goes to Harvard to follow him. She trains to be a lawyer. In the process, she realises that, you know, he's not worth it, and she actually really enjoys her education and doing something meaningful and just, you know, having an existence to herself. So she becomes a lawyer. She fully involves herself in her studies and wins a court case at the end, and it's a great movie. And I've had this argument. I wouldn't say it's an argument because I've never actually had the argument so many times, but I know people who've come to me and been like, so-and-so has told me that Legally Blonde isn't a feminist movie, and I've been like, but it is though. Like, it just is, because she's like, yeah, I don't need no man. I'm so cool. I can be a lawyer all by myself. Obviously at the start, it's very... I mean, I was going to say it's very sexist. I don't know if I would say that, actually, because the idea is basically that she's just going to be a housewife all of her life, which is a totally valid choice. If you want to be a housewife, be a housewife. That's part of feminism, that you can choose what you want to do. I guess I'd say in the musical they do kind of put in these sexist tropes at the start to kind of, you know, obviously to as more of a contrast to like where she started and then where she ended. So they talk about when they think that he's going to propose to her before he breaks up with her. You know, they're saying that you need to look young so that they're still interested and they don't cheat on you or anything like that. And like, yeah, either way, musical specifically, first of all, it's so boppy and vibey. It's a great time to listen to. I'm such a huge fan of musicals that aren't sad because I just don't like feeling sad that much. And this is one of the most fun, most happy musicals I know. Like, there's a sad song or two, but most of them are just really vibey and they're great. But specifically, there's a song called So Much Better, which I think is my favourite song in the musical. Basically at this point she is... I hope this isn't like spoiler alert for all these musicals, like I am totally spoiling them, but if you've seen the movie you know the plot. But this song in particular, she has decided that by this point she's already decided she's going to throw herself into her studies. She's still kind of like wanting Warner, and she kind of is like at this point studying to show him that she's really smart, kind of. And there's this internship that they are all applying to work on this big case that she ends up winning at the end with their professor, who's like a huge famous lawyer. He has like a multi-million billion law firm or something. And at this point, he posts a list of the interns, and she finds out that she's on the list. And there's only like 5 of them that got it or something out of everyone at Harvard who takes this class. I'm assuming everyone who takes this class has applied. But anyway, it's a really huge moment for her, and she sings this whole song about how great it is to be valued for her smarts and for her education. And like the song in particular, at least kind of like the first half, she just totally sasses Warner, and she's like, yeah, hey, you know, like all that supposedly fun times that we had and like the sex that we had and everything, yeah, being valued for this, it's so much better. I feel so much better. And that's kind of the turning point in the musical, where she then like vows to herself that it's a realization, it's an epiphany that she has, and it's just so empowering, and it's great, and it makes you want to see your name on the list, and it's a beautiful song, and I so highly recommend it. There's also like another point, there's Legally Blonde, which is a song, as in like Legally Blonde the song in Legally Blonde the musical, where she basically quits Harvard. This is really spoilery, I'm really sorry, like full warning for any of the musicals I'm talking about. But then there's Legally Blonde the remix, and in that she decides to come back. She walks into the supply closet because one of her friends has come and brought her like cool outfit back, and she's like, there you go. And it's because in So Much Better she makes a point about she's even going to dress in black and white to be more serious, because she is like known for wearing pink and all these great clothes. She has a great fashion sense, but it's perceived by everyone else as just not very serious, and like she's not paying attention and unprofessional and blah, 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 blah. Which anyway, so then her friend brings back this cool outfit, and she's like, come on, get changed, like we can do this. And she's like, no, I'm not gonna wear that like navy outfit, I'm gonna come in and I'm gonna wear pink. And it's just a great thing. And obviously the message of the musical in the end is like, what a shock, you can be smart and you can look nice and you can dress how you want, and that has no impact on your intelligence, which sounds like it shouldn't be a revolutionary idea, but guess what, it really is, because I know people who at school were told that they weren't smart based on the way that they dressed, which is the most stupid idea. Like, a teacher literally turned around to someone that I know and said, yeah, like, I'm not surprised if you get bad grades because look at what you're wearing, as if that has any impact on your it really bothers me. So yeah, Legally Blonde is great. A great feminist musical. If you like the movie, I really highly recommend. If you don't like the movie, I really highly recommend. If you haven't seen the movie, watch the movie and then listen to or would I recommend going straight into the musical? I don't know. Either way, you should listen to the musical. It's so boppy and vibey and great. Also, I've spoken about this on the podcast before, and I'll speak about this on the podcast again. The musical gets Emmett. Is it Emmett? Yeah, Emmett and Elle so much better than the movie. The movie, there's no chemistry between them. And then at the end, it's like, oh, Emmett's going to propose. Oh, they're together now. The musical actually develops their relationship, so it's not like he's just been thrown at the end, because like this is a feminist movie and she's learned to be independent, but she still needs a man. Whereas this is like, no, she values herself independently of him and she doesn't need him. He's just someone that she's chosen to love, and he appreciates her for who she actually is, not just because of the way that she looks. So, Legally Blonde's great. I just burnt myself on the tea again. Woo! Next up on my list is a song, not a musical, called Little Miss Perfect. And this has very recently been introduced to me by one of my good friends. So if you're listening, thank you so much, because now I'm obsessed with this song. So it's by Taylor Louderman, I think is how you say her name. She was Regina in the original Broadway version of Mean Girls. And I included this because the story of the song is basically, it was part of like this write-off competition, so I think everyone who participated in the competition wrote a singular song as if it was from a musical. So this like won and became part of the album or something. And this was years ago, but it's really recently blown up this year on TikTok. I don't have TikTok, which is how my friend then introduced it to me. I'm introducing it because basically the story of the song is like she's supposed to be this perfect girl. She's got really good grades. She's on student council. She is Little Miss Perfect. Like that's how she refers to herself. That's how she's known. She has a reputation, but she's questioning her sexuality, and she has a crush on this girl, and it is really vibey and boppy. And I think a lot of people. I was watching a YouTube video about someone talking about this the other day. And it was just kind of saying, which is a really valid point for musical theatre and the arts in general, but obviously, like I said at the start, I know it a lot from musical theatre. So many people listened to it and kind of like saw themselves in it and identified with it, and they've been like, this song helped me come out and all this kind of stuff. I mean, people are begging for the full musical to be written with this. The song was based off of 13 Reasons Why, I should say. I haven't watched enough of 13. I watched the first 2 seasons. I can't tell how the song was based on it. I clearly don't remember enough of the show. But it's a great song. And yeah, I think that's another thing worth saying is like musical theatre and musicals and these kind of songs, like music in general, but specifically in musicals, when you have a plot and a story going through the songs, you know, you find yourself in them. And me, as someone who isn't really part of any marginalised communities, like, knowing the impact it has on me when I find a song that I really relate to, compared to then people who are in these, and they're hearing themselves represented, they're hearing a story that they can relate to, and just the impact it has, and like the sense of community it brings to you, and the sense of I'm not alone, and the kind of like empowerment that it brings to you. Like I said, you know, a load of people have been listening to this Little Miss Perfect song, and they've been able to come out, or at least help them identify to themselves that they are of whatever sexuality. And I think that's just an amazing thing. So, you know, the arts are great for that too, and they're just so important. And to say they're actually really just made me angry. But yeah, Little Miss Perfect is a great song. I've already listened to it 3 times today. I love it. She's great at singing. I also would like a full musical about this, please. Yeah, she's also great in Mean Girls. I would also recommend listening to Mean Girls. I don't know if I have a lot to say about the feminism of Mean Girls. But it's good. The last song in Mean Girls is really empowering. It's all like, you know, be yourself, love yourself. Which is good. It also talks about stars, and I'm obsessed with stars, so. I feel like that's all I have to say about Little Miss Perfect. I feel like I did not give that enough time, but it is only one song. So, sorry, Little Miss Perfect. It's a great song. It's really funny. And like, even in that one song, I guess because it was only written as one song, not a whole musical, there is a lot of plot and story in it, and the development and everything is just great. It's perfect. So next on my list is Everybody's Talking About Jamie, which is a great musical. So if you don't know, Everybody's Talking About Jamie was based off of a BBC documentary, which I believe was of the same name. No, maybe I lied about that. I don't think it was called Everybody's Talking About Jamie. Either way, it's about this boy in Sheffield, and he wanted to be a drag queen, and he wanted to go to his prom in a dress, but his school wouldn't let him. So then from that, they've based this musical, which is phenomenal. It's so fun. It's so moving. It's so emotional. It's so empowering. It's basically like the story of him. He comes out in it, which again, like Little Miss Perfect, you know, a lot of people relate to that, and it's so nice to see. I would imagine as part of the community, it'd be really nice to see yourself kind of represented in that. And like he wrote, obviously, like every story is completely unique, but a similar thing and all of that. And then he becomes a drag queen eventually, and it's all the kind of story of that, and like how he tells his family and his friends and just the people in school in general. And there's, you know, he has to face some not nice people at school who say some very homophobic things to him. But it's a really empowering story, ultimately. Um, obviously, I, you know, well, not obviously, but for your information, I'm not a drag queen. I'm also not a boy in a rural town in the north, so I can't fully relate. But like, just listening to it is so. I can't explain the feeling that musical theatre gives me. Like, as such a fan, it just it feels so like homey and comforting, and just they're also making a film of Jamie, which I cannot wait for. It comes out next year. Please everyone go and watch it. Support. I mean, obviously, be safe. I'm hoping that COVID is not as serious an issue by then, so we can go to cinemas and stuff. But if you haven't listened to everybody's talking about Jamie, you need to. It's great. Yeah, I feel like a lot of things I have to say about it kind of link over with what I said about Little Miss Perfect, but it's a really good musical. It's very empowering. It's helped a lot of people identify with this person that they see, you know, or they listen to on the soundtrack, or they see on a stage, or, you know, soon they'll see in a theatre. And it's just stories like these that are really important. They need to be told, and they're great. Oh, something just buzzed. Ah. Okay, nothing important just buzzed. So yeah, everybody's talking about Jamie. Great show. Amazing cast, always. Leighton Williams was he took over from the original Jamie. I can't remember his name. I'm so sorry. I can only remember Leighton's because I saw him in Hairspray. And he has also done Rent, which is Rent is an amazing musical for seeing all kinds of people represented. It's a very diverse, you know, like, it's got all kinds of people in it, and it's a story that, like, isn't typically told. It's definitely not like a common trope or anything. Rent's really good. It will make you cry though, so just be warned. Rent is also very sad. But yeah, Leighton Williams was in it and he was great. And the movie looks really good, and I'm so very excited. Next up is one of my favourite musicals ever. I think it might be in my top 3. And that is Six the Musical. So if you're my friend, you've probably heard me talk about Six because I'm obsessed with it. But basically, okay, so Six is about the 6 wives of Henry VIII, King of England. Yeah, just England. I was going to say England and I was like, no. So the premise is basically, it's slightly confusing, but it also is really simple and makes sense. It's set in modern times, so it's kind of like the queens are here. That's the only bit that's a bit confusing, but basically it's a concert between the 6 queens. They're trying to decide who had the worst life with Henry. So they all sing a song. Like, it's a very short show because it's basically a concert. It's not completely musical, so it's one of the first musicals that's actually been able to come back because of COVID and the pandemic and everything, because they can do it so social distanced, because it's more of a concert than a musical. It is a musical, but it's a musical that is a concert, so they can. It's fine. Just roll with it. So yeah, they each have their own song, where they just kind of talk about their life, what happened, all of that jazz. But it's so, like, specifically, I would say the last 2 songs. So the last song is Catherine Parr's, the last wife of Henry VIII. But it kind of then morphs into just like, there's like a spoilers for 6. I can't really talk about it without spoiling 6. So spoilers for 6. Throughout the show, they all fight, and they're all like, "No, my life was worse. My life was worse. I had this many miscarriages. Oh, I had this many miscarriages." And then, you know, the point is kind of then like, Catherine Parr comes out and she's like, "Oh my god, like, I don't want to do this anymore. Why are we fighting?" And then they're all like, "Oh, but like, we're better off without Henry." And that's kind of like the twist of the show, is like, that's the thing that they were trying to do all along, was like show that, you know, independent, you don't need a man. And it's just so good. Like, I'm explaining it really badly, and I'm making it sound like an awful show, but it's so good. It's probably like, I mean, it's definitely the shortest musical that I'm talking about now, so, other than Little Miss Perfect, that's a song. So if you haven't listened to Six, listen to Six, because it's, I know people who don't like any musicals, or like, they are not musical people, but they will listen to Six, because it's basically a bunch of, like, each song is influenced by pop artists. Beyonce, Ariana Grande, Avril Lavigne, Lily Allen. So there's loads of, like, contemporary pop influences. So it's really easy to get into if you're not a musical theatre fan. And then basically the last song in Six is called Six, and they all rewrite their history. And they're like, first of all, they call it Her Story, which, chef's kiss, I love it. But they basically, like, kind of rewrite what their life would have been if they never met Henry and they were never married. And it's, I mean, obviously it's sad because you know that's not what happened, and you know what did happen, and the fact that, like, they just wouldn't have really had a good life, any of them. But, like, the musical is just very empowering, and it's very female positive, and, like, even disregarding the content of the musical, like, if we're not even gonna, obviously we have talked about it, but we weren't even gonna talk about that. So the band that they have are all on stage the whole time, because it's like a concert, which is really good, because obviously the people who normally play the music in musicals aren't seen. You kind of see the singers, and that's it, but the orchestra deserve just as much recognition. But they're on stage, and they are all women, which is so cool. Like, the fact that it's just an all-female show. I'm not sure about the dynamics of backstage, but I have a feeling that's at least strongly female run, if not completely. And the musical was written by 2 uni students. They were just, like, doing their degree, and they were doing the tutors, and they were like, let's write a musical. It was written by a girl and a boy, or a woman and a man. Lucy and Toby, I believe their names are. So it was written by a guy as well, not just a girl, but, like, the show itself, everyone on stage is female, and it's just such a strong female influence, and I live for it. It's really fun. I saw half of it live for my birthday last year. We didn't make it in time for the first act because London traffic was awful. And Six was the one that I was supposed to be going to see twice this year. I was supposed to go see it for a friend's birthday, and then straight out for my birthday last year, after I didn't get to see it, I booked tickets to see it again. But they were both cancelled, and I'm so sad about it. I will see it in full at some point in my life. Do I have anything else to say about Six? I just love it. Like, it's one of my favourite songs to listen to in the car, and it does make me cry. Here's the thing, right? I am quite an emotional person, I won't lie. However, one thing that always gets me, like, it will make me cry if I'm kind of, like, by myself, it's just strong women. And I don't know why, but, like, listening to Six makes me cry, because in Catherine Parr's song there's a bit where she says, like, why can't I tell my story, like, why do I have to be part of Henry's story? The lyrics are, I'm fixed as one of 6, and without him I disappear. And then she's like, why can't I tell my story? In my story, it's really hard to say the words and not sing them. She's like, I was a writer, I wrote books, I wrote songs, I wrote meditations, I fought for female education, I got a woman to come and paint my picture rather than a man. Like, she was, and I have not fact-checked the historical accuracy of this, but I have a feeling that, like, a good portion of this is true, which is just amazing. Like, this is the thing as well. Six was, like, I listened to it the first time, didn't love it, tried it again a year later, was obsessed with it. And it's one of those things, like, it's a valid point. You never think of these women as independent people, because you only ever learn about them in the context of, that's wife number 1, that's wife number 2. You never learn about Catherine of Aragon and just her life, and then, oh, and there's her husband. That's husband number 1, and that was it. And just, like, disregard Henry and just know about Catherine. It's always, we're studying Henry VIII, here's a little bit about Catherine of Aragon, here's a little bit about Anne Boleyn, and how that relates to Henry. It's never really, at least, like, obviously there are historians and scholars and everything who have looked at that. I'm not saying that no one in existence has ever done it before the musical came out, but, like, definitely while you're still in school and everything, you never look into these women. And maybe I was just being, I mean, I've never really done the Tudors, which probably was part of why I was overly ignorant of it and everything. But for me, I just never did really consider them as, not as independent people, but it was always just, oh, the Six Wives of Henry VIII. And that was it. So, like, when I listened to the show and I was kind of like, oh wow, these people have their own history and they have their own story and they are independent to Henry, and they, you know, their story deserves to be told just as much as his does. It was a light bulb moment for me. So I really recommend listening to Six. I'm gonna have some more tea. Hold on. I feel like I have to give a disclaimer every time I stop talking for a second, because I feel like it just is kind of... I think I've said this before, but I think if there was a video version, then it would be less awkward because you can see that I'm drinking. But otherwise there's just a silent pause, and I feel like I have to justify why I've stopped talking. Otherwise I feel like it's just a little bit awkward. But anyway, the last musical I have to talk about, and I mean, this is not an exhaustive list. I could probably do a sequel in the future. Like I said, I love musicals. I listen to them all day, every day. That's not an exaggeration. Ask my housemate who lives next to me. All she hears is me singing. I am really sorry for listening to this. But the last one I have to talk about is Hamilton. I have one specific song to talk about, but if we're just going to talk about Hamilton in general quickly, I'm sure this is the most, like, out of all the musicals I've talked about in this episode, I am so sure that Hamilton is the one that most people would have known and listened to. Oh, I have another... Oh, it's gone. Never mind. It was a phone thing. But if you don't know, Hamilton is... So it came out in 2015 in America. It's written by Lin-Manuel Miranda, genius, and it follows the story of Alexander Hamilton, who is one of the founding fathers of the United States of America. He was in, like, the first government. He was the right-hand man to Washington in the Revolutionary War. He was an immigrant from the Caribbean. Had to think about that then. It's a great musical. It's phenomenal. I've literally been obsessed with this since it came out. I told everyone in my school to listen to this, and then they all kind of started to, and I was like, yes, I have started something here. Obviously, I'm not saying I'm the only person at my school that listened to Hamilton, and I got everyone else into it, but I told so many people that they had to. And it blew up. It still is huge. It's just come out on Disney Plus. They were, with the original cast, they filmed a pro shot over 3 days, and it's just been released on Disney Plus a couple months ago. So if you have Disney Plus and you haven't watched it yet, I highly recommend. If you don't have Disney Plus and you haven't watched it yet, get the free trial, watch it, and then cancel it. I mean, Disney Plus is great, I recommend, but, like, just watch Hamilton or listen to the soundtrack. Obviously you can listen to that for free on Spotify. Might be on YouTube. There's been a lot of things with, like, the copyright on YouTube, so it used to get taken down a lot, but I don't know what it's like there now. But one of the amazing things about Hamilton, and one of the things that I honestly think helped it to become so big, was the fact that obviously this is a story about predominantly white men, well, almost exclusively white men. Thomas Jefferson, Alexander Hamilton, Aaron Burr, George Washington. Did I say Washington? Either way, all of these people, obviously in history, were white. But Lin-Manuel Miranda comes from Puerto Rico. He is not, like, your typical white American male. And he decided that he was going to cast a mix of people from different races, which was groundbreaking. It's phenomenal. So you have all these different people of different skin colours, different ethnicities, playing what were these just white people in history. And it's really weird now to look at portraits of, like, George Washington or Aaron Burr and be like, no, that's not how I see you in my head, because I just see you as Chris Jackson or Leslie Odom Jr. or whoever. So that was one of the amazing things about Hamilton. It's another one of the things that was, you know, like, for those people to see themselves represented, it was like a groundbreaking opportunity. You have like musicals like Hairspray a lot of the time when it's being casted, like, you can't play this role because of people's weight, which is awful. Like, if they go for Tracy, who's supposed to be a plus size character, sometimes they were told they're not plus sized enough. So like, the opportunities in musical theatre is something that needs to be changed and needs to be more open. But in Hamilton, it was just one of the most amazing things that Lin-Manuel Miranda decided to cast all these people of different ethnicities and give them a chance that they never would have had before. And, you know, like, oh, it's just amazing. Also, Jonathan Groff is in it, and I'm like, his voice is just velvet. I love it so much. I mean, all of their voices. And that's another thing as well, actually. Watch it on Disney Plus over listening to the soundtrack, because there is such a difference in, like, hearing them sing it live, essentially, as opposed to a studio recording where it would have been edited in some way, or there would have been many takes, or, you know, like, it, nothing compares to it, and I only wish I could have seen it live. But I did want to talk about one song in particular in Hamilton, which is the Schuyler Sisters. I wasn't planning on singing that, and then I kind of sang it, but it kind of wasn't the tune of the Schuyler Sisters, which is weird. But basically, it's these three sisters, Angelica, Eliza, and Peggy, who are, I mean, this isn't very historically accurate, because in history there were many Schuyler siblings, and there were, like, Philip Schuyler, their dad, had sons and everything. But for the sake of the musical, there are the three sisters, in age order: Angelica, Eliza, Peggy. And they come on and they sing this song, and it's before the revolution has really kicked off in New York, or it's kicking off kind of as they speak. And they were like, wow, a revolution, new ideas, this is great, yes. And then Angelica comes out, she's like, yeah, I've been reading Common Sense by Thomas Paine, which is a very famous text from that time period, and it kind of influenced a lot of the people who were writing the Constitution and everything after the war. And she says, you want a revolution, I want a revelation, so listen to my declaration. It's really hard not to sing this, and I'm trying not to, but it's impossible. So she says, so listen to my declaration, and then she quotes it, which is, we hold these truths to be self-evident that all men are created equal, which I believe Thomas Jefferson said. Yeah. And then she says, when I meet Thomas Jefferson, I'm going to compel him to include women in the sequel, because obviously we hold these truths to be self-evident that all men are created equal. Women were obviously not included in that. All men are created equal, not all women. Which, like, I've always loved the song. It's always been a great song. But I listened to it the other day and it did make me cry, because I was just like, oh my god, strong women, yes, include women in the sequel. Which is nice. This is not to say as well, like, there was a little bit of backlash after Hamilton was released on Disney Plus, because a lot of people were saying that they don't delve into the fact that, like, they kind of try to talk in the musical a little bit about slavery, and they're like anti-slavery. One of Hamilton's friends, John Lawrence, was trying to have a black battalion in the army, and he was trying to fight anti-slavery, and a lot of them were anti-slavery. I'm pretty sure Washington said that he was anti-slavery but still just had slaves. But, like, Thomas Jefferson had loads of slaves, and it's not really something they talk about a lot in the musical. And I don't think per se that they were avoiding it. I think that it's just obviously, like, it's already 3 hours long, and there's so much to cover, like the Revolutionary War and the setting up the government, and it's more about their political careers. So it's, yeah, I mean, I was just going to say, like, I just want to acknowledge, obviously they don't talk about that, and it does kind of idolise these people because it's a musical, and that's kind of the nature of it. It's like, obviously they don't want to paint all these people in just a horrible light, so I'm not saying that all these people were stellar humans and they've been great, because they did have slaves and they did mistreat people and they could have definitely done better and been better. But Hamilton the musical itself, like, as a musical, is great. The Schuyler Sisters song, women are great. Lin-Manuel Miranda writing Hamilton and casting who he casted in it and everything was just such a groundbreaking, revolutionary choice. So, like, the musical in itself was really diverse too. So, like, yeah, they didn't talk about that. And those people did very bad things, and they should be held accountable for that in history. And we shouldn't idolise them. But the musical made waves. And they were big waves, and they were great waves. And you should listen to Hamilton if you haven't already. Okay, I've gone on for absolutely ages. I literally thought before doing this episode, I was like, oh, I've only got like 5 things on my list. That probably won't be very long for me to talk about. This will definitely end up being like a 20-minute episode. But no, here we are, 45 minutes in. So, my bad. I hope you enjoyed. Save the arts. Please, like, consume the content now more than ever, just to prove that people enjoy the arts and that these people don't need to retrain to work in cyber. So stupid. Consider this my formal fuck you to the UK government. Oh, I'm very angry. But yeah, I hope you enjoyed me talking about musicals for a solid 50 minutes straight, essentially. Please do message me if you want to talk about musicals. Just have a lot of fun chat. Recommend me new musicals. I love them, and now I want to go and watch Hamilton, because it's obviously one of the only ones you can really watch. Although, actually, that's a good point. There is Legally Blonde is on YouTube. They did a pro shot. Well, they did something on MTV. So that's on YouTube, so you can watch that one as well. Yeah, message me on the Instagram at theaveragefempod. You can email, which is theaveragefeministpodcast@gmail.com. Please share this with a friend. Just get the word talking about the arts, as in not necessarily just share the please also share the podcast with a friend, but just, like, you know, share what's happening with a friend, get people talking about it still. Like, save the arts. It is a viable career. They are not low skilled in any way, shape or form. Like, if it's that low skilled, I dare you to do what they do. And if you can do it, I'm very impressed. And it shows that it's a viable career. And yeah, like I said at the start, this obviously goes to more than just musical theatre. This is dance, this is other stage acting, this is acting on a set in a movie or in a TV show, this is photography, this is makeup, this is fashion design. Art is in so many forms, and they are all equally valid and equally as important. And, I mean, this is the thing, right? Okay, so, sure, the arts are low skilled, not viable, they should all retrain to be in other careers. So we never listen to music again, we never watch TV again, we never, like, technically this podcast is, you know, some form of entertainment. It kind of falls in that category, so you never listen to a podcast again. That's not viable. In essence, like, that's never going to happen. We're never going to stop consuming media and entertainment, which is a form of art. I'm not saying that this is art, but, you know, it's that kind of industry, the arts and entertainment industry, that they're just... You can't see me, I'm making a lot of angry hand gestures, and not even the rude ones, just a lot of, like, I can't even explain what I'm doing with my hands. I'm just, like, angrily grabbing air. I hope you know what I mean. I'm going to say bye for the 3rd time. I need to stop talking. This is awful. I'm so sorry, everybody. But yeah, please do follow us on the Instagram. We're nearly to 100 followers, which is really exciting. If you're listening on YouTube, please give this a thumbs up and subscribe and leave a comment. If you tend to listen or are listening on Apple Podcasts, please give a 5-star review if you like the podcast. Share this with a friend, a family member, a co-worker, a stranger, anyone. And I think that's everything. So I'm going to say thank you, and I will see you next week. Be safe, save the arts, have a great week. Bye bye.